another episode of the Women Writing Intentionally show with Jenny and Tracey. As you can see, Jenny's not with me today, but I am joined by the wonderful Erin Chamberlain, who is one of my very good friends. So today, instead of Jenny and I sharing our things writing and publishing, I will be talking writing and publishing from insider secrets to author journeys with Erin. And Erin is a book consultant and editor who's worked for traditional trade publishers for nearly 20 years. And bad books hurt her soul, which is like my favorite quote of Erin's. I always think of that constantly. She started out selling books in a bookshop and has worked across most areas of publishing, including editorial, commissioning, production, and sales. She is passionate about bringing ideas into the world and supporting authors to create books that will have an impact and change lives. She's the founder of the Write Now Experiment, which is a writing accountability space where she writes with you and is on hand to answer writing and publishing questions. And I can say from personal experience, I've been in Erin's Write Now space and it is absolutely phenomenal. So thank you so much for joining us, Erin.
Thank you. That makes me sound all fancy, doesn't it?
And in case you couldn't tell, Erin's also an Aussie, just like me, but she's been living in the UK for, what is it, like 11 years now?
Oh, much longer than that. Nearly 20.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but we can Oz up together on the I always do this. I come across an Australian accent and, we just have to Oz it up, don't we?
Yes. So if you guys are watching and you don't understand what we're talking about in the comments, just drop it in and we'll translate it back into English for you. So today, Erin and I are going to be talking about traditional publishing and a little bit about the pros and cons, like why somebody would want a traditional publishing deal, and also some of the things that you need to be aware of in terms of the realities of traditional publishing. So, Erin, we've been chatting in the lead up to this episode about some really interesting things that have been happening in the traditional publishing industry.
Shocking you, haven't I?
You have. Would you like to share a little bit about that for our audience here?
Sure. So I don't know if anyone's been following or if you're just, maybe I'm just a big book geek. I think that's probably true. I'm a big book geek. But there's been a big trial in America, an antitrust trial, that Penguin Random House, they want to buy Simon & Schuster. And the America Department of Justice, I think, doesn't want that to happen, or didn't want that to happen. I'm not actually sure the outcome. I should probably go and find that out, because what they're concerned about authors and worried that the more that the big five publishers kind of, eat up all of the smaller publishers, the worse it's going to be for authors. The authors are going to get less money in their advance, and just in general, it's going to be more about business and less about championing the author and the art of books. Now, here in the UK, we don't care. They'd already decided that the Tories have said that they're fine for Simon & Schuster to team up with Penguin Random House. They've got no issue with it. But over in the States, they're a little bit more concerned about it. So there was this big trial, and some really shocking things came out of this trial. Big stats. I mean, you might have heard that, maybe you haven't. I'm a book geek. But there was this one stat swirling around that said that like 90% of books sold less than 12 copies. Is that what it was?
So I've got this tweet that was from April Henry that said that it came out during the Penguin Random House trial that out of 58,000 trade titles published per year, half of the titles sell less than a dozen books. So less than 12 books and out of 58,000 titles, that means that we're talking about 29,000 books that are published in a year sell 12 copies.
Yeah.
12 copies. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
and you guys were talking about your launch and stuff last week. Pretty sure you sold more than 12 copies.
Yes, I don't have today's stats, but I know that Jenny did over her launch weekend that they sold over 400 copies of Quiet and Badass. So, I mean, clearly that puts her above 50% of the traditionally published books by a country mile.
Absolutely, absolutely, and, and there's been some stuff that's come out, like there's this interesting Substack that I came across, which you probably put in the show notes, if you want.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of stuff that we could be putting in that you could be putting in the show notes. But so basically, there are statisticians that crunch the numbers on how many books sell. I mean, if you get the bookseller and publisher here in the UK, you get some of the official data from their bestseller charts, and that's from Bookscan. They've got a similar thing in America, NPD Bookscan over there, and they say the data is a little bit misleading. But somebody who's a statistician in there has published some other less crazy stuff, but it's still really crazy things that essentially 21.6% of books sell between 1,000 and 5,000 copies, and 51% of books, and this is frontlist books that are published, and in her sample of about 45,000, new frontlist books over the course of a year.
So what, just for the audience, what frontlist means is that they are a brand new release, that they are being published for the first time. So it's not a reprint of an existing book. Right, Erin?
Yeah, that's right. Or else it's a book that's come out in the last year. So, Harry Potter novels, they're considered backlist. The Gruffalo, considered backlist. Anything that was published last year. So even, books that are doing amazing still, like, what's his name? Richard Osmond and his crime books, the ones that haven't been published this year are considered backlist because they were published last year. So, there are still newish books that are considered backlist, but also really old books,
Pride and Prejudice, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. The Tiger Who Came to Tea. There's a lot of money in children's publishing, but in the backlist. But anyway, so these frontlist titles, about half of them sell less than 1,000 copies, and this is from publishing houses. So that's why we thought it might be a good idea to talk about why people really are drawn to traditional publishing, because I mean, there are some reasons that people are drawn to traditional publishing, aren't they? And mostly they're to do with thinking that someone else will help them market the book and get their books into bookstores, and also so they don't have to find the money to pay for the self-publishing process themselves. Because if you want to do it well, if you want to make a book that isn't going to hurt my soul or your soul, I'm sure as well, Tracey,
Yes.
you've got to pay for editorial work, you've got to pay for design work, because essentially you're paying for the hours that people work in order to do these tasks. And it's a week's work at least to edit a 40,000-50,000 word title for somebody.
And that's like an 8-hour day, right? That's not just like 2 hours of like freelance editing or anything like that. It's like 8 hours a day, 5 days a week to get through a manuscript. It is a full-time job.
Yeah, it's solid work, and you've got to be on and at your best in order to do it well. When I'm quoting out an editorial job, I'm quoting my hourly. I'm expecting to get through 2,000 words in an hour. So that's not a bad formula to go off for any authors listening who are wondering how much it might cost to get their book copy edited. And that's just copy editing. That's not even proofreading.
Developmental editing.
Yeah, developmental or structural editing, and then, cover designs, typesetting or formatting or layout, whatever you're drawn to. Buying your own ISBN.
I think this is the thing that a lot of people don't realize, and I feel like Jenny and I did touch on this in one of our early episodes, is that there's a perception that self-publishing can be free, and there are lots of people who do go and just, smash out their book and upload it onto KDP and design their cover in Canva and think, yes, like that cost me nothing. But they may or may not actually sell any copies of that book, and they may or may not get good reviews on their books, because the thing is, when you don't have those eyes on your book, as you were saying, like, you are right, you're not going through and having it filtered to shine, to make it sparkle and shine, right, to be the best possible version of your words and your story. And that's where the editing process is so critical to creating beautiful books.
Absolutely. And there are things that I'm sure you see, that I see, that just scream self-published and not self-published well, mile away. If you find somebody that's got page numbers on the front matter of their book, or you've opened a book and you find you really have to crack the spine because the margins are too wide, or else even on the front cover, sometimes you can just get the design slightly too wide, slightly off, and it just, it isn't what a traditional publishing, has high standards. I mean, not super high standards. You're going to find a typo in a traditional publishing book that you pick up. And when I worked in-house, we'd send our books to repro, which is the step where we got our files converted for the printers, at the same time that we'd send them to the proofreader. So it was only really bad mistakes that we paid to be amended by the repro house, and we just held over anything else for a reprint. So, you are never going to get a perfect book, and trade publishers, cut corners with the best of them. But there are just things that are obvious that even, when you get into the text and the layout, I was looking at a self-published book last week, and when hyphens are there instead of end dashes, and when the smart quotes are mixed up with the straight quotes because, the fonts haven't gone through correctly and nobody's proofread it and gone through and made those changes, which are a pain to do, but absolutely necessary. They're the things that say, I've been self-published, and you wouldn't expect somebody who doesn't know anything about publishing to know that those are the things. So I don't know, maybe my expectations are too high.
Well, I have to say, I mean, having worked with you, because for those of you who are watching, Erin and I actually worked together on a book in 2020 that I was working on, and I brought Erin in to do the editing work on that. And I have to say that it was such a joy working with Erin, because her standards are very high, and she cares about books. So it is one of the things that I have noticed, particularly in the indie publishing industry as well, is that there is a huge discrepancy in the quality of editing amongst some publishers. And I think part of that is to do with how people come into publishing, to be perfectly fair. And when you don't know what you don't know, you can't appreciate and set those standards and those bars high enough, and it ends up showing. But by the same token, going back to what we're talking about today, the reasons why people go for traditional publishing deals is because the perception is, and Erin wrote a beautiful post about this the other day, somebody is choosing you. They're saying, you are good enough. We think that your writing is so amazing that we are going to foot the bill for that. And we are going to pay to publish your book. We are going to pay to design a beautiful cover. We are going to get it into stores for you. And you think, oh my God, I've made it. Like, somebody thinks that I am good enough. But the sad truth of that is that while that may seem like the case, the chances are that most traditionally published authors are never going to out-earn their advances because they might not sell more than 12 books.
Well, they certainly are going to be struggling to sell more than 1,000 books. And this actually isn't a surprise to me, because when I worked in production and I was ordering books for the UK market, I would hardly ever order more than 2,000 copies from the printer for the UK market. So, the idea that, everybody is selling, 100,000 copies, they're the unicorns. they're the ones, and they're the ones with the big audiences as well, because really a publishing deal isn't saying your writing is great. It's saying you're a commercially viable risk for us to take to publish your book. And, one of the other things that came out of that Penguin Random House antitrust trial, the CEO of Penguin Random House is on record saying everything is random in publishing.
Yeah. There was actually a brilliant headline, which I'm going to share, where it said, book publishers just spent 3 weeks in court arguing they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that their defense hinged on their own incompetence, because, as Erin just said, they have no idea how to predict if a book is going to become a viral success.
And it's getting even harder because book talk, different ways that people are engaging with books. I saw today that adult nonfiction digital audio sales have surpassed ebook sales in the last month for the year. So audio is better than ebook at the moment. It's making more money, which is, somewhere where the sort of indie traditional self-publishing side of things is still catching up a bit. Google Play's got some interesting options out for AI reading that is currently free. It's interesting.
It is. And so there were a couple of tweets that you shared with me the other day that were really interesting. There's a lady named Jane Friedman who has been doing a lot of the expose and following on about this. And so some of the fun statistics that she shared from the Department of Justice versus Penguin Random House antitrust trial was that 90% sell fewer than 2,000 units, that Penguin Random House said that their total marketing spend comprises 2% of their revenue. And that means that roughly $55 million of marketing spend is spent on $2.7 billion worth of annual sales. And yet they cannot sell more than 2,000 units for 90% of their books. I mean, those numbers are just absolutely freaking mind-blowing, that you can spend $55 million and still not sell more than 2,000 books.
Yeah.
For a particular title. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little, some of these stats are a little twisted. And twisted, because you can read stats in lots of different ways, can't you?
Yeah.
But
I think there's a whole book written about that, How to Lie with Statistics.
something like that. But I think the bottom line is that publishers don't supply equal marketing support to every book.
Mhm.
And just that thing that, publishers are often guessing how to market books. They don't, they do have deep pockets. So, the big auctions that happen around the Frankfurt Book Fair times and stuff like that, they can afford those big, six-figure advances, but they're very rare and won't earn out. Yeah.
So one of the other ones that you were sharing with me was talking about why you would want traditional versus self-publishing, that Colleen Hoover, who is a self-published author.
She's a bit of a mix of both. She's got some books traditionally published with Simon Schuster, which is probably why Penguin Random House want to buy them. But she started off self-publishing, and I think she has like a dual revenue stream.
Mm-hmm. But it was specifically talking about how she uses BookTok. And one of the things that I was reading about this was that traditional publishing houses are really struggling to replicate the success of BookTok, which, for those of you who don't know, it's using TikTok, but with the hashtag BookTok, and basically getting your book to go viral and talking about different things about your book. And apparently it's totally the place to be. I'm not on TikTok, but maybe if I can get myself energetically aligned with that, we'll see what happens. Probably not though. But anyway, the point is that by 2020, all of the books written by Colleen Hoover had sold only 237,000 units before BookTok became a social media phenomenon. And then, so she's a romance author, and according to NPD BookScan, she sold this year 7.3 million print books.
And that's only up to August.
Yeah. So in 2020, she sold 237,000 books. In 2022, in 8 months, she sold 7.3 million by going viral on BookTok, which was 2.3 million more copies than the Bible. And that was
got another new release coming out in a few weeks.
So, I think the point that we're really trying to make here is that while traditional publishing may have that allure of validation that you have been picked, that you are considered good enough, that all that glitters is not gold, right?
Yeah, because I mean, you'll be a small new release for them unless you are somebody like Colleen Hoover who can sort of prove that you've sold 200,000 units on your own, and they take you up like that. But there are all sorts of the thing with traditional publishing is it does feel good to be picked, and it does feel good to have an editor who's there to look after you and not have to decide all of the things. But sometimes those decisions get taken away from you to such an extent that you might not get the final say on your cover. You might not get the final say on even the title of your book. And the validation is there, but I'm not sure that there's much more than that anymore.
Well, I recall Denise Duffield Thomas, who has recently rebranded Chill and Prosper, right? Because I love Denise. She comes up a lot. But she tells the story that with Chill and Prosper, with Chillpreneur, which is the previous version of Chill and Prosper, which came out in 2019, just before the pandemic, Hay House hated the name Chill and Prosper. Oh, sorry, they hated Chillpreneur. They really
They
didn't
also
want to
hated
keep the
Get
title.
Rich or Bitch too, didn't they? They didn't like the
Yeah,
bitch in the title.
probably not, but because she'd already published it like that, she rolled it in. But they didn't really like Chillpreneur, but she was adamant that that's what it was going to be called. But she hated the cover. So they picked the cover and she didn't love it. And she picked the title and they didn't love it. But now they've rebranded the whole book because they've updated it, obviously taking into account the way that business has changed as a result of the pandemic and different bits and pieces. And she's updated it and included a whole bunch of new case studies from her Money Bootcamp community, and expanded and revised it. And she's now called it Chill and Prosper. And she's a lot happier with the new cover and she's a lot happier with the name. But it just goes to show that sometimes those decisions aren't actually wholly yours. And I have heard within other circles that sometimes authors find that their writing and their manuscript and their voice, by the time it's been filtered through a number of editors and had been tweaked to become more commercially viable, that the essence of their story is not necessarily the way that they had originally articulated it.
Yeah, that's true. It shouldn't be true, because an editor is supposed to champion the voice of an author. But I guess when there's pressure from an editorial director or something like that, who's getting pressure from the sales director, who's getting pressure to, it's a business. Selling the books is a business, and it's a risky business at that. So it, an author becomes a commodity almost when you get into traditional publishing. I mean, I love Denise's stats about how she made as much money self-publishing as she did from her Hay House book deal. I think she says that in the same podcast actually. But she was able to access the money more easily from self-publishing because it pays out more regularly. And a traditional publishing deal, once you've signed your contract, can take anywhere up to 18 months to 2 years for your book actually to be released, and your advance pays out in chunks. So you get, maybe 25% on signature, then maybe another 25% when you deliver your manuscript, and then 50% when the book releases, and then any royalties after that, once it's earned out what they've paid you in advance. So I don't know. If you publish with Ingram Spark, you still have to wait 90 days in order to start being paid. I think KDP pays out earlier than that.
Yeah, so with Amazon KDP, it's basically 60 days after the end of the month. So if you earned royalties for October, you would get paid them at the end of December.
Yeah, it's an extra 30 days for Ingram, which will make sense because book publishers, bookshops take books in on consignment, on sale and return. And if you have not set your book firm sale because you want to try and get into bookstores, you've got to play the game and wait to see if the books get returned. And obviously you don't get paid for those. In fact, I think you pay Ingram Spark for the privilege of them destroying your books.
Which sounds super awesome. All that hard work going to waste.
Well, I think you can get them delivered back to you as well. It's quite expensive. It's so, people don't know that either about the book industry, that everything is on consignment, sale or return. Books go out firm sale. Colin Hoover would go out firm sale, I would say, because the bookstores would be certain that they would be selling the stock. But if the books store isn't certain they're going to sell the stock, they get a 3 to 6 month window to sell it, and if it doesn't sell, they return it to the publisher. And that's why there are so many remainder bookstores and all of those sort of knockoff book sale book sales you see in malls and stuff like that.
And I think one of the things about how that works is that to break it down, when people talk about advances, I know that Hay House runs a competition for their authors if you join their author communities or if you attend one of their writers' workshops. And they give you the opportunity to win a $10,000 publishing contract. So using Erin's example there, you don't just get $10,000 put straight into your account. You might get 25%, which is $2,500 upon signing the contract. You might then get another $2,500 when you deliver the manuscript, and then you might get $5,000 when the book is finally released. But generally speaking, the initial print run is maybe, say, 5,000 copies of the book, which means, and that it's approximately about $2 in royalties per book. So 5,000 books times $2 is a $10,000 advance, right?
You need to sell all of them.
Yeah, so all 5,000 of those books need to sell before you will earn another single cent in royalties from those books. So it's only once you sell 5,001, 5,002, 10,000, yeah, that you make like $6. And I think this is what people don't understand, that traditional publishing doesn't mean you're just going to be like rolling in dollar bills, y'all. It's, you need to be commercially successful to then earn out more royalties. And so going back to talking about Denise, she recently shared that her most recent royalty check, so she gets royalty checks twice a year. I think she said maybe it's once a year. Her most recent royalty check, she earned $34,000 or $39,000 in royalties, but she'd had, like new books, and she'd had like a bunch of different things happening, and it was her highest one ever. That doesn't necessarily happen for everybody though, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not just going to get published and suddenly be getting $39,000 checks in the mail. And her books, she was self-publishing for a long time before she managed to roll them into a traditional publishing contract. Whereas if you are self-publishing, or if you are working with companies like Ingram Spark or some of the hybrid publishers where you do earn royalties as well, you have a lot more control over the income that you earn from your book, because even though, yes, you are marketing the book yourself, you are directly benefiting from the royalties for that. And depending on how you how much you've invested in your book, and how much marketing, and how big your audience is, and what your author platform is like, you do have a little bit more control over how much you earn. Even when it comes to setting prices on places like Amazon KDP, you can set your retail price so that you might be earning more than $2 in royalties every time your book is sold. And that can very quickly add up to big dollars. One of the Facebook groups that I'm in is called 20 books to 50K, 20 books to 50K. And they're organizing a retreat for next year. They've decided they're going to do it in like a castle in the Mediterranean or something like that. And it's invite only, because they can only have X number of people. And they're inviting people that are making $500,000 in royalties, like $500,000 in royalties a year through self-publishing. Now, these are fiction authors. These are not necessarily transformational nonfiction or things like that. And these are very prolific authors who've been doing it for a long time and have their marketing strategies down, and they've got big backlists and back catalogs so that they can cross-promote and cross-sell between different titles. You bring out a new title, and then you get a bunch of people that then start going back through and purchasing your old books and things like that. So but they have control over their royalties, and they have control over how much money that they're able to bring in a different way than if they'd gone with a traditional publisher who may have changed the, fundamental things about their books and their series because that's not saleable, or that's too niche, or that's,
Yeah.
no, nobody wants to read paranormal women's fiction or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then on the flip side, you've got other Facebook groups where people are attempting to publish very low content books onto Amazon and are just complaining that they've published their book and nobody's buying their book. Um, so,
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
it's like, have you told anybody that your book exists? And they're like, no. And you're like, so you just uploaded it and thought that what, people were just gonna buy it?
yes. Yes, I believe that's what most of these people think, probably because they see those, 20 books to 50, what was it? 20 books to
Yeah, I think it's 20 books to 50K, but also because it's a big thing at the moment. It's a bit like when the coloring books were really popular about 5 or 10 years ago, and everyone was like, oh, you could design coloring books and upload those to Amazon, and then you will make mad bank, right?
Yeah.
Everybody needs coloring books.
Everyone's making a journal.
But the thing is, they're all downloading the exact same inserts from Creative Fabrica for a start. So they all look identical, and they're all just using Canva for their covers, and it really shows.
Yeah, I haven't seen, I mean, I love a journal. But it needs to feel good and it needs to have high production value. And I'm happy to spend £22 on a notebook from Papier or something like that has a lovely, I don't care if it's lined on the inside or not. It's all about the cover for me. And I'm
A
not,
little bit of foil embossing.
yeah, although that's not good for the environment anymore.
Damn it.
I know. I know. But yeah, it's crazy just, well, it's not. I mean, like you say, you do have some element of control over how you market your book, and it is about talking about your book and getting those reviews in, and mentioning that you have a book whenever you're on a podcast, or making your book a real important element of your marketing plan, especially if you're writing nonfiction, and especially if you're looking for your book to be an entry point of people getting to know you better and wanting to work with you more. Self-published authors really need to think about how they're going to make their money back, and often a bigger upsell after the book is the easiest way to do that, and then you don't have to worry about it. Everything else is gravy, right?
And I think that's one of the reasons why nonfiction is actually a really good road for entrepreneurs to get into self-publishing and to use it as effectively like a lead magnet into their businesses. But you really do need to understand how to leverage that book, which is something that Jenny and I talk about quite a lot, because it's no good just writing a book and then never telling anybody about it ever again. Once it's launched, you're like, okay, welcome out into the world. That's great. See you later. Bye. You have to, as you said, make it the center point of your marketing. Mention it on every podcast. Make sure that you're putting it in your email signature or something, author of, like Denise Duffield Thomas, author of Get Rich Lucky Bitch or whatever, and have that in there with your link to Amazon or your link to your Goodreads page or to your Author Central account or whatever it is, or your website, and really actually making sure that you are positioning yourself as that expert in the field, because otherwise it's not going to do the work for you. It is a tool that you can use.
Yeah, there's no such a book isn't a passive income thing of itself. It's something that you've created that you don't have to do anything to when you sell it, but you still have to sell it. You still have to talk about it.
Yeah. And which is exactly why when you notice a lot of authors constantly talk about their books, even if they've come out years and years and years later. Yasmin Boland, for example, of Moonology fame, talks regularly about how her Moonology book has been in the #1 bestseller charts since 2015. So for like 7 years,
That's
her book.
amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes, not every day it's #1, but it's pretty much been at the top of the charts on Amazon, more or less, for the best part of those 7 years. Obviously, Hay House does, I think last week or the week before, it was on sale for $1.99 or something, similar to the way that when Jenny launched Quiet and Badass the week before last, it was against Chill and Prosper, where Chill and Prosper was on sale for $2.69 Australian. And that's part of the traditional publishing houses also trying to drive sales and move them back up the bestseller lists, because you drop the price, you get more people purchasing it. The more people that purchase copies, the quicker it goes back up the bestseller lists. And it's part of how the game is played. But by the same token, those are also strategies that people who self-publish books can employ. So as Erin was saying, like, it's not just you create it and then you just leave it sitting there on Amazon. You need to have a strategy about what you're going to do with it. Are you going to drop the price once every 3 months or once every 6 months, and then put a big push out there and say, hey guys, guess what? My book's on sale for a week. You can pick it up for $1.99. Yes, you're not going to make as much money out of that as you would if you were selling it for $6.99 or something, but you're going to drive those sales, which is going to put it up the charts, which is then going to make it more discoverable for other people outside your audience.
Yeah, and you may well come across your next 2 or 3 clients as well who pick up that book for $1.99 and then go ahead and buy something else from you. It all book sales don't necessarily, all the revenue from your book, it doesn't necessarily have to come from how much you charge for your book. If you've got it, if you've got a really good reader journey on from your book into your business.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that, because Jenny actually came and did a masterclass for my Lunar Wisdom authors last Friday, and it's the same strategy that she used with her Quiet and Badass authors, and the same one that she used when our Aligned Leaders book came out a year ago, that helped her to make $17,500 off the back of the launch of Aligned Leaders. And it wasn't actually a strategy that we were taught as part of our publishing journey. Like, the publishers had said, write this book, it's going to blow up your business, it's going to give you all of these things, but then it didn't quite pan out exactly like that. But Jenny, of course, has a background in sales and marketing, and so she applied what she knew to create this framework, and she used that with her Quiet and Badass authors to create this launch strategy. And I know that at least one of her authors ended up booking 16 discovery calls.
Amazing.
As a result of the launch offer and the launch strategy that she had learned from Jenny, because on launch day, and that's still, and all of the results and everything are still coming in from that. So some of the girls have booked other client calls, have done other things, have been invited to do guest expert spots and collaborations and all of these other pieces. But 16 discovery calls that they wouldn't have had otherwise if they hadn't been making this push. And so she came in and was talking to my girls last week, and it was really interesting to see how the cogs started turning in their heads, where they're like, oh, I get it now, that this is how we can put these things together. And I think it's really important to consider what your strategy is as an author, and how you're planning to use that book, because it isn't just, I'm just going to write a book for fun. It should always be, how is this book going to move my business forward? How is this going to offer value to my clients or my potential clients and give them a taste of what it is that I do, so that they're going to be inspired to perhaps want to reach out and find out more about me or more about my programs or want to work with me. And I think that that is one of the things that often gets neglected, because we think, oh, I've got a story to tell, but we then don't think, I've got a story to tell and this is how it's going to bring people into my world as far as my business goes.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the, for when I'm doing book planning with my clients, that's one of my very early questions. I always am looking to get them thinking about that from the very start, so that they can seed that reader journey throughout their entire book, so that it comes out to where they want. I mean, Denise Duffield Thomas does it perfectly, right? All roads lead to Money Bootcamp.
Yeah.
You buy the book. What can you do next? Money Bootcamp. What's that? £1,500 investment?
Yeah, so it works out to be about $2,000 US.
2,000 US. So, buy Chill and Prosper for $2.99. All of a sudden, are you investing 2,000 US? Quite possibly. I mean,
it works for me.
Someone, one of our mentors, Lisa, similarly, she, read the book, put it down, read the book 9 months later. The next day she was part of the Money Bootcamp,
She joined us after I did. I think I'm a little bit to blame for that, because I was like, Lisa, come and do it with me. We did briefly have an accountability group together, but over Christmas, New Year, it kind of all fell in a hole in 2022. But it was one of those things where the client journey is very, very defined in Denise's books, because, as you say, all roads lead to boot camp. And she's just launched her Sacred Money Archetypes course again, and which I am a part of because it was bundled with the package when I joined bootcamp. And in one of the modules, she literally talks about how, her husband, Mark, would come to her and say, oh, we could try this, or, oh, we could try that, or bring all these shiny things to her. And she was like, well, that's great. Yes, that totally appeals to my maverick archetype of let's try new things and whatever. But that we could go and get distracted and go off on a tangent, or we could think how can we sell more boot camp? What could we do to make that more fun? How could we do this? And really did bring it back to all roads lead to boot camp. And I was talking with actually one of my Lunar Wisdom girls today, in fact, about how for her, with her launch list strategy and her offer stack, how she could bring that back to the journey of how is this going to bring clients to her one-to-one program, and how does that all fit together so that all roads are then leading to her one-to-one, because that is the thing, what you were saying with your author journey, how are they seeding that throughout their story so that all the roads lead to that one outcome? Because it doesn't then matter where they come in at your funnel. Do they come in at the very beginning where they join with your freebie, or they buy your book for $1.99? Are they coming in at some low to midpoint entry where they might be signing up for a masterclass or a short course or a consultation or a strategy session or something? Or are they then coming in and joining the full-blown program because they just want to dive in and get everything done? And I think that's where people often get confused, because they think they need to have this whole raft of offers, but that they forget that those need to be logical steps, and that everything needs to lead on to the next thing in a logical kind of manner to then give you that opportunity, as you said, to earn back your return on investment.
Yeah, I mean, say let's just pluck a not too crazy number out of the air. Say you invest, 5,000 in, you might get a bit of change from that. You might want a better cover, so you might pay a little bit more, but that's probably about middle of the road. If your course is 2,000 and you need 3 people to buy it as a result of your reader journey, and then everything else, no wonder Denise Duffield Thomas is making more money self-publishing. Because she's able to design her books so that everything does lead to Money Bootcamp, which is, making it a commercially viable product for her rather than for a publishing house.
Yeah. And I think that is very much a part of being conscious of what your goals are and why you're doing this. Because when we forget what the purpose is, when we're just doing it because everybody else is doing it, or it seems like a good idea, or we just have money to burn, or we are a bit just frenetic and all over the place, we miss how it all comes together. And that money that we invest, like $5,000 is not out of the realms of possibility to self-publish a book in any way, shape, or form. It can be significantly more than that if you're also employing things like ghostwriters to help you to build out your manuscript. And that is something that you need to be factoring in, because to produce a good book, like to have a high quality cover, isn't just something you really can't just jump into Canva and whack that together if you're not a designer. Physically you can, but for people to look at your book and think, wow, that looks amazing.
Yeah.
Usually they're not going to be thinking that about a Canva cover you've just put together. Those are usually very obvious. You're like, oh, that one was designed in Canva.
How many times have you seen the typewriter on a cover? The Canva typewriter.
How many times have I seen backgrounds that I'm like, oh, that's a Canva image. Oh, those are Canva elements. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you also need to be careful now, because Canva's changed their legal situation, and you can only use, if you're making your cover in Canva, you can only use the free elements. You need to get permissions on any of the premium elements in Canva. So you may as well go to a photo library and do it properly. Otherwise you'll find yourself at the wrong end of a
copyright lawsuit.
Copyright situation.
Yeah. And I mean, and these are the reasons why we have conversations like this, because these aren't the things that everybody knows. Not everybody who is writing or publishing is aware of these kinds of things. And, I know Erin and I both feel very passionately about this particular issue. We've discussed over the last probably 3 years that we've known each other about books and publishing. And it's something that I know Jenny feels very strongly about as well, when it comes to transparency and integrity in publishing, and not just glossing it over with the, oh, everything's going to be fine. Like, you just need to hire somebody on Fiverr, or, just need to go and do it for the lowest possible amount, or you don't need developmental editing because we're going to preserve your authentic voice. Which really,
do you know what I do?
We're going to stick it through Grammarly.
Yeah. If an author comes to me and shows me a designer on Fiverr, I just go and I have a little dig around, because I will find them on their own website. Then I won't have to pay the fees to Fiverr or to Upwork or whatever. I can just pay them directly to the designer or the editor or whoever. and I can check their credentials out, and I can see who they've worked for, and I can see that they've worked in books. And I would much rather do it that way around than pay Reedsy, however much they skim off the top of the fee that's charged. It's not that hard to do.
Well, and that's true too. I mean, even Upwork, they skim something like 20% off the worker's fee. So if you paid $100, which is a ridiculous amount for a cover, but anyway, if you paid $100 for a cover, the person who is designing that cover is only going to get $80 of that. But then Upwork's also going to charge you 10% on top of that. So you'll pay 110%. You'll pay $110. And the designer gets $80 out of that, and Upwork walks away with $30 of that, and they're laughing all the way to the bank. But I mean, places like Upwork really do give the publishing industry a bad name for a start. Because, for example, taking ghostwriting as an example, you go on to Upwork and people are looking for somebody who will ghostwrite a 50,000 word manuscript for $450.
Well, that's just ridiculous. I wouldn't even edit a 50,000 word manuscript for $450.
But do you know why that is? It's because actually there are these guys, I think they're called the Mickelson brothers, who have this course about how you're going to make millions of dollars creating audiobooks. And their strategy is you go onto Upwork, you should only pay $450 to $800 because you should hire somebody who doesn't know their value and will basically write for the joy of writing. And we'll write a manuscript for you, do all, like, you probably don't even have to provide the source material. You just say, I want a 50,000 word manuscript on the law of attraction.
See, that's dangerous, actually, because who's to say that this $400 person isn't selling the same book to you as they're selling to someone else, So
there is that. But I mean, even from the perspective that if you were ghostwriting a 50,000 word book, so one particular website I was looking at was talking about, so a book like that will take approximately 150 hours or approximately 4 months. So let's just go with 150 hours for a minute. You've worked 150 hours and you're getting paid $450. And that's $450 before Upwork takes its 20% out of it, by the way. So let's
finish writing that book because you probably died of starvation.
Yeah, so let's pretend that Upwork didn't take out the 20% and you got $450. That means you literally got paid $3 an hour to write that book. And I'm just like, nope. If I'm going to get paid $3 an hour, I'm going to just self-publish that myself. If I'm going to write a 50,000 word book about the law of attraction, I'm just going to publish it under my own name, and you can keep your $450.
What too? You need to start an Upwork revolution there, Tracey.
No way, honestly. I tell you. But by the same token, if you're charging $10 an hour times 150 hours, that's $1,500, which is like 3 times the price. But if you were charging more than $10 an hour, which really is not unreasonable for something like that, because $10 an hour is not really a living wage. Yeah. I think, in fact, in Australia, for the sake of argument, the current minimum wage is something like $27 an hour. So let's round it up to 30 because my math is like 27 is just too hard to work out. So $30 an hour times 150 hours means that you're going to be paid $4,500 to ghostwrite that book. I mean, that is 10 times more than what people on Upwork are expecting to pay. But it's because they've been taught that this is the model. Because you pay $450 for the book, you then go and hire somebody to do the profit share on ACX, which is like the Audible equivalent where you basically hire somebody to narrate your book. It's basically it's the KDP, but for audiobooks. And so you hire somebody who will narrate the book. You offer to do profit share where you do 50%, so you don't pay anything out of pocket. So it's only cost you $450. You upload it to Audible, and then you laugh all the way to the bank because you're now making $20,000 a month. Or so the course tells you.
Without telling anybody that you've got a book on Audible, probably as well, because people are just discovering it. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that probably the Mickelson brothers make more money out of selling their course than they do out of their $450 books.
Yes, I would say that is probably true.
Mm-hmm.
Let's find an up note to finish on, though, given that we've been accidentally speaking for an hour. I don't know. Do we have an up note? I think my up note. I think my up note is, really think seriously about whether you need that permission to publish a book from traditional publishing, because you can get everything you need, if not more, from self-publishing, however you choose to do it. And if you need somebody to give you permission, hire a book coach.
Yes, I did love that particular part of your post the other day where you were like, if you need permission, just come and ask me. I'll give you, I can take a look at your book and I'll tell you what I think. Because that is the thing about book coaches. And, obviously there's you, there's one of the girls in my Lunar Wisdom book is also a book coach. And the amount of value that book coaches bring to the table is absolutely phenomenal and I know that you've worked with several of our colleagues to help them put their books together. And I've been in your Right Now circle, and I know the kinds of things that you do because we've had the pleasure of working together on books before, that it helps you to articulate what it is that you want to write and how you want to structure it. But it also gives you that confidence to really craft that story in a powerful way and keep it on track and keep it focused, because that is one of the things I think. You start writing and then you get stuck around that, what is it, like the 15 to 20,000 word mark, and then you just are like, you're halfway in, but you're still like only halfway there, and you're like, what do I do now?
Exactly. It's it's a real honor to help people bring their book to such a point where once it's published, people are writing to them, telling them just how much it's changed their life, or winning awards. One of my clients got highly commended in the wellness category of the Business Book Awards last year, this year, back in May. And that book, actually, the process of writing that book has completely changed her life. She's running as she started writing that book, I said to her, I bet you are a coach within 5 years. Didn't even take one. She's running her first group coaching call tomorrow. She was on the Right Now Experiment call tonight, preparing for her first group coaching call tomorrow. Even if you're not quite sure that it's time for you to write a book, sometimes that journey of writing a book can make things super clear of what you want to do with your life going forward. And if you get stuck, that's sometimes a little bit of a nudge to think about whether what you're actually writing about, what you actually are doing right now, is what you want to do next year. If the reader that you're speaking to is the person that you want to keep on working with. Books are magic.
They certainly are. And we do need more of them in the world, but we need more good books in the world.
Yes.
So if you are a passionate writer and you would like to make sure that the books that you are putting out into the world, if you are not part of our Women Writing Intentionally community, please do make sure that you can join us in the Women Writing Intentionally community. But if you would like to find out a little bit more about Erin and her Right Now community, you can actually join her free Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/Right Now Writing Community. So that is Erin's free group, and you can connect with Erin. You can get a little bit of support there, and you can find out more about her containers. Erin does also have a very special offer on at the moment until the 7th of October, which is Friday this week, where she is offering a full 12 months membership to her Right Now experiment, where she runs 6 hours worth of writing accountability sessions per week over 3 2-hour sessions. So she has an evening session, a midday session, and an early morning session, depending on what time of day you prefer to do your writing.
And where you live in the world.
and where you live in the world and which time zone you're in. And you can actually join for 12 whole months for less than £200. So it's less than the price of a coffee a day.
It is. And, you know, with the pound so low at the moment, it's even better value for our American friends, is it not?
Yeah, and I can highly recommend it because Erin normally charges £40 a month for that, which means that it is valued at nearly £500. So you are getting it at less than half price. So if you need somebody to help keep you accountable, Erin does also hold an amazing space. It is not just an accountability space to do writing. She is always available to answer questions as well. So she does facilitate a space where if you're feeling stuck, you can talk with her and she will give you the love, support, and guidance and kick up the bum that you need to get things done. So, Erin, is there anything else you would like to share with our audience before we wrap up for today?
No, I think it covers it. I mean, you know, I knew we wouldn't only speak for 40 minutes, Tracey. That was never going to be a thing.
It could have been worse. Thank you so much for coming and chatting. I feel like we covered a lot of ground today. We talked about traditional publishing, we talked about self-publishing, we talked about audiobook publishing, we talked about ghostwriting. We covered a lot of ground, and I am sure that our viewers this week certainly learned a few things about the back end of the publishing industry that they didn't know before. So if you did enjoy this episode, please do make sure to leave us some comments if you're catching the replay. No matter which platform you're on, just drop some comments in the box below and we will get back to you as soon as possible, or feel free to reach out on social media as well. If you would like to connect with Erin, her contact details will be popped into the show notes, or you can join her free Facebook community, which you can see here on the screen as well. So thank you so much. Next week, I will have Jenny back with me again, and we will be talking about publishing and all things the author journey. So thank you very much, everybody. We look forward to seeing you again soon.